I think it's about time we talk about the season that the big dumper, Cal Raleigh, is having this season. I've been wanting to make this video for a while, but every time I think he's going to slow down. He's going to have a bad month. I don't want to jinx him. And yet here we are at the All-Star break, and he is having one of the most historic seasons ever by a catcher. He is on pace to obliterate the most home runs in a season by a catcher. He's still on pace to break Aaron Judge's AL record that he set a couple years ago. He just became the first catcher to win the home run derby. And he has probably the best nickname in sports, the Big Dumper. So he is having one of the best seasons, one of the most notable seasons we've had in baseball in recent memory. I don't want to talk if he should win MVP. We're going to save that video for the next couple months. If you want to have that debate, make sure to subscribe. I will certainly talk about that throughout the second half of the season. But what I do want to talk about is how Cal Raleigh has turned into not just one of the best catchers, but one of the best power hitters and best hitters overall in baseball. So if you are a big baseball nerd like myself, we are going to do a full breakdown, get into the details, break down how Cal Raleigh has turned into one of the best hitters this year in baseball. But first, as always, if you liked any of this, if you like this kind of content, make sure to subscribe. I'm still growing. I'm still starting this channel. So if you liked any of it, if you want to see more, hitting that like button, hitting that subscribe button, letting me know down in the comments if there's other players you want to look at, if there's other baseball related content you'd like to see, make sure to subscribe. That would help me out a lot. But let's get to the breakdown for Cal Raleigh. Before we get to Cal's historic season this year, let's first start in 2020. That was when he was the 8th ranked prospect within the Mariners organization, according to MLB.com. And they had this to say about Cal back in 2020. MLB.com said, in quote, "The Mariners' third-round pick in 2018 out of Florida State, Raleigh made it to Double-A in his first full season of pro ball and led all minor league catchers with 29 home runs. He followed that up with 9 homers at the alternate training site in 2020 in what was perhaps the best offensive performance of any player there," end quote. If we flash forward to 2021, he was still the 8th ranked prospect in the Mariners system, and MLB.com had this to say. "Raleigh has been tabbed as an offensive-minded catcher, and the power he showed at Florida State has carried over to the pro game. He definitely has a better power tool over hit, but he controls the strike zone well enough that his tremendous raw power shows up from both sides of the plate. He can drive the ball to all fields with more success from the left side." Now, that was what scouts thought of him in the minor leagues, and a lot of that has translated. Now, no scouts, nobody at MLB.com, probably not even Cal's parents, his siblings, his brother that got famous over All-Star Weekend. I don't think any of them saw this coming, but the tools have always been there. Even back in the minors, back in college at Florida State, he's always been an offensive-minded catcher. Coming out of Florida State, it was actually his defense that had some question marks. He spent a lot of time working on that, and he turned into a platinum glove winning catcher. But before then, he was an offense first catcher. And as those two quotes say, he's always been a big power hitting catcher who also has some of a hit tool. So it's not like this was just a boom or bust type of hitter. He's always had those tools. And that's what's led him to be, I think, a top 10 catcher over the last few years. He's turned into, again, a good, maybe fringe all-star type catcher the first few years in the big leagues. But now in 2025, he's just ratcheted that up. He's turned into clearly the best catcher and one of the best hitters on the planet. So now the question is, how did he get from a good player with good tools to an elite hitter? And that's where we're going to break it down. So let's start with his Statcast page, and we're going to get into the details. There's going to be a lot of stats. There's going to be a lot of nerdy stuff in here. I'm going to try to boil it down as best I can to just summarize how Cal is doing this. So let's start with his batting profile. If we compare the last 2 years, and I think last year in 2024 was his best season. He had been trending up for a couple years. A couple things stand out. First, let's talk about the similarities. Cal is always going to be a player that strikes out a little bit more than average. Even this season, he's still only in the 22nd percentile in strikeout percentage. He's always going to whiff a little bit more. He's always going to chase a little bit more than average. But when he does hit it, it's going to come off the bat strong. He's going to have a high exit velocity. He's going to have a high hard hit percentage. But the big difference here from 2024 to 2025 is he is barreling up way more pitches. And his barrel percentage has gone from 15% to 20%. And that means this year, 20% of the balls that he puts in play, he is getting the barrel of the bat to, which in layman's terms, he is making great contact. He is getting the ball on the barrel or best part of the bat. And that doesn't necessarily mean you always hit a home run or you always get a hit. But if you can make the best quality contact, that's pretty much all you can do as a hitter. So that to me is the first thing that stands out. The second thing that stands out when we look at all of his stats is his launch angle. How big of an angle is his ball leaving his bat? Cal's always been a high launch angle guy. He's somebody that wants to hit the ball up in the air. He's not going to hit as many ground balls. He wants to get the ball up. He wants those home runs, those fly balls. But he's made a significant jump this year. He's up from 21 degrees all the way up to almost 25 degrees. And to provide some context, he is first this year in launch angle. Out of all the top players, he is number one. And even if you look at the last 5 years, only Adam Duvall in 2023 has had a higher launch angle in a season. So Cal has turned from a top 10, one of the higher launch angles in baseball. He was 9th in launch angle last year, to being the number one guy and as high of a number as we've seen the last 5 years. So that is really the key, is he is getting better contact and he is getting the ball up in the air more. And that's leading to a lot of success. He's not going to have these crazy high exit velocities as some of the guys. O'Neal Cruz, he's obviously at the top. Vladimir Guerrero Jr., Aaron Judge, Shohei Ohtani, they're going to have the top percentiles in exit velocity. Cal's a little bit lower, but when you combine good barrels and a good launch angle, you are going to have success and you are going to hit a lot of home runs. And that's what we've seen from Cal this year. So now that we've looked at his Statcast page and now we've seen a little bit of the underlying metrics as to why he's having more success, the question is, how did he make this change? Because we can look at the numbers, and I love numbers. I'm a numbers guy. But at the end of the day, it's not like he can just press a button and increase his launch angle. This isn't video games. He's actually got to do something. So how did he make that change? How did he literally make that change in launch angle, in barrel percentage, all of that? Well, the first thing we can look at is just looking at his stat line from all his full seasons in the MLB. And yes, these are still numbers. I promise we will get to some video, some evidence in a second. But if we just look at these traditional stat lines from 2022 all the way through this year in 2025, I'm sure a number of things stand out. But to me, the biggest one is he's finally turned into a switch hitter this year. Cal's always been a switch hitter. He's always been a switch hitter going back to college. I'm sure he grew up always being a switch hitter. But there's different levels of switch hitter. And for some guys, they have way more success on one side of the plate than the other. And for Cal, that's definitely been his left side. He has definitely been more of a left-handed hitter. And at times, almost to the point where maybe he should have only stayed left-handed. But he stuck it out. And this year is finally the first year I would call him a true elite switch hitter. And while that doesn't make all the difference, and we'll talk about both sides of the plate, that makes a big difference in some of his numbers. Because if we look to, let's say last year in 2024, if he's only batting 183, OPS 695, that's below average. If you're putting 171 plate appearances on that side, that is really just a below average hitter, that's going to bring your overall numbers down. And well, yes, his left side of the plate, nothing amazing, but still 768 OPS plus, 234 average. Those are solid numbers, especially for a catcher. When you're being dragged down by your right side, that doesn't help. And so when you look at this year, it's dramatic. Going from a below 700 OPS right-handed hitter to now 1235, 16 home runs already batting right-handed. And that's been the huge difference. And I think a lot of it, as Cal himself has pointed out, is he's finally getting comfortable batting right-handed. Because as you can see, pretty much every year, he's gotten like 3 to 4 times more at-bats left-handed. And even going back to the minor leagues, which I don't have up, he only had 175 plate appearances right-handed. So he's barely had a full season worth of right-handed at-bats in his career. And so as he said, he's now getting more comfortable. He's getting more reps. He's put more work in with his right hand. And that has made a huge difference, as you can see in these splits. So he's clearly a good right-handed hitter now. That's a big improvement from what we've seen the last few years. You can tell that by the numbers. You can tell that by the eye test if you've watched him play at all this year. But now let's look at some more on the field stuff. Let's not look at the underlying metrics, launch angle, barrel percentage, all the Statcast stuff. If we just look at old school baseball stuff, how has Cal gotten better? Well, the first thing that stands out, and it stands out in the data, it also stands out just watching him play, is the one biggest weakness probably that Cal had before this year is surprisingly fastballs. And that might be surprising to some, especially those that haven't watched Cal play a lot in the past few years. But he's actually been better against off-speed stuff, change-ups, breaking balls, and it's actually been fastballs that have given him the hardest time. And if we pull up Statcast again, if we look at all the pitches that he's faced in the 3 years prior to this year, you can tell that four-seam fastballs has given him the most trouble. Outside of maybe some sweepers, some splitters, knuckle curves that he faces way less of, four-seam fastball, he has the lowest batting average, the lowest slugging percentage, doesn't get a lot of barrels to it. He doesn't whiff as much, but he was just not making good contact. Then we can compare it to this year. And you can see a dramatic improvement. He's still not a maybe fastball hitter. You can see slider, he's slugging 639 against. But four-seam fastball up to 236. He's now slugging 583 against four-seam fastballs. That is a big difference. And again, I think that's been one of the weaknesses that he's had the first few years. He doesn't have that anymore. And if we look at the tape, that shows it. And so let's do a little tape breakdown. This first video is from 2023. Cal's facing former Mariner, Emilio Pagan, and he gets 97 top of the zone. He's just not ready for it. And yes, we can kind of just pick out a few different pitches to show a point, but you could look up a lot of examples, and any Mariners fan will tell you this was a common way to get Cal out. Fastball top of the zone, just wasn't ready for that velocity. And we could say the same thing right-handed. This was also from 2023 against Matt Moore. Same thing. Fastball, a little bit higher up out of the zone, just couldn't catch up to it. Well, if we look at this year, it's a different story. This is from June of this year, facing Kenley Jansen. Jansen tries to get a fastball, or I think it was labeled a sinker, up at the top. Cal's ready for it. Demolishes it, right center field. That is the Cal that we've seen this year. He's able to punish fastballs, specifically fastballs at the top of the zone, and that's made a huge difference because he's always been able to hit breaking pitches. We can pull up the video from his most famous probably moment outside of this year when he sent the Mariners to the postseason. All Mariners fans, they know the call, they know the video, but this was a back foot slider. He gets the bat out in front, and that was a lot of the home runs that we saw Cal hit before this year. He's always been able to hit that kind of slider out in front. He gets his legs into it. He gets his big dumper into it, and he can punish that pitch. But now, if he's able to punish some of those fastballs up at the top of the zone, that's going to make a huge difference. And if we put these side by side, you can kind of tell the difference. And I'm not an expert in swing paths, in batting stances, any sort of thing like that. But if you look at them side by side, you can tell the difference. Pre-2025 Cal, his hands were a little bit noisier, moving a little bit. His stance was a little bit more open. His front foot a little bit out in front. Compared to 2025, he's a lot more stationary. Hands are slightly up, and he is pretty much straight on. His front foot is not out. He has essentially calmed himself down and essentially just trusting his hands and trusting his ability to get to that high pitch, but also to be ready for anything down below as well. And that's working for him. And we can see the same thing on the right side of the plate. 2023, he was a lot more open. He didn't seem to really trust his right side. Fast forward to this year, and he looks a lot more confident, a lot more calm, and that's made the difference. And so because of this, Cal has turned into a hitter. You can't really throw a pitch that he's not going to be able to hit out. If we pull up the zone of all of his home runs, there's a pretty wide variety of pitches on there. There's fastballs up, there's fastballs in, away, there's changeups away, there's breaking pitches down, there's hanging breaking balls. Pretty much anywhere in the zone, Cal is going to be able to hit it out for a home run. A lot of that is just due to his raw power. But if you combine that with some of the changes we've gone through, he's now an elite power hitter. And to wrap up, we can pull up a montage of videos showing Cal can hit pretty much any pitch out. If you want to pitch a fastball up at the top of the zone, as Mitchell Parker tries to do, Cal can get that out. both right-handed and left-handed. If you want to pitch away, make sure he can't pull it, as Stephen Kolek tries to do. He can take it the other way. He has opposite field power. If you want to pitch up and in, as Bailey Ober here tries to do, Cal can now get to that because of the changes that we mentioned in his stance, because of just his raw ability and his power. You want to try to be like Chris Paddock, get a curveball down, he can still get to that. That swing looks very similar to his clinching home run back in 2022. Eovaldi tries to get a splitter down. Again, Cal, that's what he's always been able to do. Get his hands out in front, use his powerful dumper, use his powerful legs. He can get to that pitch. If you want to go right-handed, you want to put a changeup away, Cal has enough power. He can get to that pitch. And then like pretty much any good power hitter, if you're going to hang a slider like Jack Leiter does, Cal's going to demolish that. So all of those pitches, as we put them all up, those are all different locations, all different places. Fastball up, fastball away, splitter, curveball, any sort of off speed down. If you hang any of those pitches, Cal can kind of get to everything. And that's what makes a good power hitter. Not only can you not make a mistake, I think a lot of good power hitters in this league, if you make a mistake, they're going to make you pay. But the elite hitters, and the elite hitters that I would include Cal this year, they will make you pay even for good pitches. And they make it really hard to find a spot that you can't make them pay. And that's where Cal's gotten. That doesn't mean he's a perfect hitter. I don't mean to make this video to say he's unpitchable, to say he's can just beat you from wherever. He still has his weaknesses. He's not a perfect hitter by any stretch. But because of these changes we've talked about, because of how he's utilized his raw skill, the skill he's had all the way since college, along with some key changes, he's turned into an elite catching hitter. And a hitter we haven't seen in a long time and potentially ever from this position. That just shows how good he is. So we'll see if he continues in the second half. Again, if he does, we will have plenty more to talk about in terms of should he win MVP or not, him versus Aaron Judge, what that looks like. But for now, we can just appreciate the great first half that he's had and appreciate one of the best catching seasons we've ever seen in Cal Raleigh. So if you like this video, again, make sure to like and subscribe. I'm still getting started on this channel, so plenty more stuff to come. If you liked this content, if you want to see more from other sports as well, make sure to subscribe, and we will see you in the next video.